Thank you very much. This may seem like a little bit of a eclectic panel, but it ties together, I think, and not just in our own minds. But I think Robert, I'd like to start with you. I'd like everyone on the panel to just talk a little bit about what they do, why they do it. Robert, I'd love you to just summarize the amazing story of your glucose sensor. And then Ryan, if you can do the same thing at Cliff and your life at Nike a little bit, why you're doing what you're doing. Will, how you're trying to bring diabetic solutions to the world and how you see these crossover technologies like the Libre really breaking everything open for people with weight problems and just wellness, and then we'll sum it up. So can you lead it off, Robert?
Sure, absolutely. It's great to be here. So I work for Abbott. I run Abbott's device businesses. Within that group of companies, we have a business called Diabetes Care, and this company is focused on developing monitoring solutions for people living with diabetes. So anybody that does have diabetes in this room or has family members that have diabetes knows that one of the things that somebody with diabetes needs to do is to constantly prick their fingers, take a drop of blood, put it on a test to be able to see what their glucose sugar level is so they can decide what food to eat, what kind of exercise they're going to do, and depending on the type of diabetes you have, what kind of medication to take. We've been doing this for about 20 years. We developed a sensor-based system where it's about a size of 2 quarters. You put it on your arm. It goes into about 2 millimeters into your skin. This little kind of filament that's got chemistry on it, and it lasts on your arm for 14 days. And you can take your phone, or you could take your reader that we give you, and you can wand it over the sensor, and it gives you some pretty amazing information. It gives you what your glucose reading is. It gives you an 8-hour trace of the glucose level, how it's been over the last 8 hours. And it gives you a trending arrow in terms of indicating where you're going. If you're going up, you're going down. And basically, it lasts on your arm for 14 days, and it gives it just a wealth of information so that you can make decisions and kind of see the full picture of where your diabetes is at and where your sugar levels are at. We've had an amazing kind of success with that. We've launched it in 2014, and it's available in about 35 countries, and it's having a profound change on how people with diabetes are actually managing their diabetes, because they get to not just see one point in time, that one speck of blood, what the result is. They get all this wealth of information. When that sensor lasts on your arm, it collects 1,344 glucose data points over 14 days. We then take that information, we provide a real simple, easy to digest kind of visual information of how your glucose level looks like in a day. And it's having a profound transformation in how physicians, endocrinologists are looking at their patients. You can have a very clear conversation as to what's going on during the day. Is it the hamburger you're having at lunch? If you're going to keep on doing that, because I can see what goes on at lunch, we need to change your medication, right? It's growing exponentially, and we're just very proud because we're actually having an opportunity to change the way people are really treating this disease. It's been, we've been trying to focus on for so long. We've run trials that show that people get better, real randomized controlled trials. And a real interesting thing that we've been able to do is collect the data from the devices in a de-identified manner anonymously. About a year ago, we had 50,000 users, and we took the data from those 50,000 users. It was about 400 million data points, about 86 million hours of monitoring hours. And we were able to show in a kind of real-world scenario with kind of very large groups of patients that their diabetes health and wellness was improved dramatically. We were able to see how many hours of the day they were in their normal range. Another interesting insight that we got was that nobody knew what happened with people with diabetes between midnight and 6 a.m. nobody was kind of waking up at 3 a.m. to actually test their finger, their glucose. And the physicians have now been able to see ultimately what goes on between midnight and 6 a.m. And it's just been an incredible wealth of information that they can change medications instead of taking it in the morning, take it at night. And that's been very powerful too. So we do this, and I've been doing this for about 22 years at Abbott in this business because of ultimately the impact that we're seeing patients are having. And I think we're just scratching the surface with what we're going to be doing with this kind of sensor-based technology. It's ultimately changing behavior. It's not a drug. It doesn't do anything in your body, but it gives you information in a way that is understandable, digestible, and where you can actually take action. And I'll just close by saying, when I was challenging the R&D team and basically, not believing that they were able to do it, so I was able to kind of wear it. And I don't have diabetes, so my blood sugar level is pretty boring. It's pretty straight. But I was able to see what happened to my body when I would have a bagel in the morning, or an OJ, or a pizza and beer on a Friday night. And there are these things that right? You're told, hey, fruits are better than the actual juices, right? You're told that, and everybody kind of knows it. But it's only after seeing what happens to my blood glucose level after taking a little glass of Tropicana orange juice that I don't drink orange juice anymore, because it's had that kind of impact on me. But the point I'm making is that it's changing behavior. It's not doing anything in me, but it's ultimately leading me to take better decisions. So that's what's exciting us and what excites us to do what we do.
Great, thank you. Brian, do you want to get into what you're doing at Cliff and how you view potentially sensors for targeted nutrition? And
yeah, for sure. Good morning, everybody. I usually look out into the crowd and see a few familiar faces, and I know about 2 people here, so it's an honor to be here, though. The composition of this, both panel and group of people, is different than what I would normally present in front of. I came from Nike, and the team that I led at Nike was primarily advanced concepts. So it was thinking about 3 to 5 years out for the organization, and extrapolating against data, consumer trends, and obviously insight on where the company needs to show up and how they need to act and behave in a future state. One of that was looking at manufacturing and looking very closely at just the reality of every one of us. Probably about 75% of you all have different feet, right? Different shoe sizes. So one body of work was extrapolating against that and looking at data sets that we could actually turn the retail footprint into mini manufacturing facilities. Eradicate essentially shoe sizes altogether, so you could actually get the shoe size that was perfect for you. Fit, performance, obviously comfort, all of those things provide context for you, right? That's your experience. So if you can walk into Nike moving forward, which you can actually in New York. So my last effort just recently launched, took many years to get to and a lot of layers of politics. But in New York, they've actually launched their custom fit program. So they can print essentially off of a 23-point scan custom shoes for you in 30 minutes. So I think that body of work is sizable because it provides customization. It leads to context that is best for you, because you have a visceral and tangible reaction to, does it fit well? Will it perform for you? And it eradicates shoe sizes as we currently know it, which are off the shelf and mass made. The reason that's important is my new role and decision I took, which was to leave a publicly traded company and a large group of people whom I'm very passionate about and love. And that's go to a very small organization that's about 25 years old and is in the food sector. Packaged goods, as you all probably know, are kind of the last huge sector within business that have not undergone a digital transformation. So my task is a little daunting, but it's to take Cliff into that future and agitate the organization for business change and future orientation. That orientation and a body of work that I'm working on now is to look at, what does personalized nutrition look like, and how does that actually lead to personalized food for you. We started a company, Gary and Kit, our founders, very involved to this day, and I work closely with them, that was looking at a competitor bar at the time. There was only one on the market in the 90s. that competitor bar really had no choice. It wasn't clear of it whether it was real food or not. It had, I'm sure, great ingredients for you, and it was really rooted into the running and the cycling community. Where food is gone and consumer trend is gone is portable food, because people's eating behavior have changed over time and have, of course, evolved in many ways based on our own time crunch, based on our own tenacity to do more in our daily lives, and based on the amount of data that we actually live with day in and day out. So we're looking at data sets really closely, looking at the future business model of CPG and asking ourselves the question of, what is our company if we don't sell the bar in its current form? What if our bar isn't on shelf and our offering or our service is great food that you can order organically from us, the pairing and the expertise of pairing odd ingredients that taste great for you, and actually the science behind what is the best chemistry of that product for you, looking at sugar levels and looking at carbohydrates and looking at fats. So that's a future state in terms of what we're working on and what I lead within Cliff Bar & Company.
Thank you. Will, so you're a well-known endocrinologist who tries to bring solutions to diabetics over the world, but this is like targeted nutrition for everyone, or what's the sense, or how are you looking at this broadly and then specifically?
So I work at Joslin Diabetes Center, which is one of the largest diabetes center in the world, 100 years of history. But in that kind of historic backdrop, there's been such revolution in the technology world, and diabetes happens to be one of these diseases that is a prototype for integration of healthcare and digital health. I'll give you one example. In practicing medicine, we spend a lot of time asking our patients, how has your diet been? How have you been exercising? You know, all these information questions that we spend minutes on, it's actually really a waste, if you think about it, right? What are the patients going to say? Just in terms of quantitatively, it's filled with recall biases, right? So how well have you been eating? Not bad, doctor. Okay. Well, how many times have you had low blood sugar? Well, a few times. I mean, all these things are really a waste of time. This is a prototype where accurate information, when it's compiled and expressed in an emotionally relevant way, can be a great tool to change behavior, but also inform a medical decision. I think, we always lament about the fact that healthcare system is built on a legacy model that was pretty practical maybe 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. When you had an acute disease, you come into the hospital, you were given antibiotics, you go home. You don't need to see the doctor until the next time you had an infection. But diabetes being a condition where you live with it 24/7, health occurs in between the medical visits. How do we empower the patients in between the visits is really a major challenge. So the group that I run, we provide advisory programs with our partners around the globe. We've been active in about 12 different countries. In these countries, we're looking for models where we can incorporate technology into healthcare, but not just only use it like a tool, but we truly want to understand how to integrate new business model that allows a different way of care to be delivered. For example, I think it was mentioned earlier in the discussions how healthcare physicians and doctors gets paid. They get paid when patients come to see you. But if they don't come to see you, do you still get paid? That's one of the biggest problems here, right? The business model that has to be fashioned to allow for these in-between visits to occur. So we collaborate with payers, with new healthcare system, thinking about digital health clinic as part of online, offline offering, and how we could help to shift the cost of healthcare a little bit earlier in the prevention phase rather than in the treatment phase. And it's an enormous challenge, but sometimes I feel that in the U.S., we're so burdened by existing infrastructure. Sometimes it's very hard to move. It's very hard to come up with new business model that allows these kind of nimble sort of arrangement to occur. And so we're experimenting outside of the United States, in China, in Middle East, and other places where payers and healthcare centers are coming together and working with technologies that can enable these new way of thinking, a new way of delivery. I think it's a really exciting time. And
Great.
I hope in the US we will be able to do that sometime in the future.
All right, I think what one thing I just wanted to bring up is I think it's great to hear all of the different areas that you guys are attacking this problem. Me personally, I've been doing this for 12 years, focused on food, nutrition, and trying to change people's behavior. But simply changing people's behavior, I think where Robert's coming at it from is you have to track. If you want to know something, you have to actually track. That's the first step, right? And it's been very hard over the last 10 years. It was manual, then there was the devices on your wrist, and now we've got a lot more accuracy with what Robert and team are doing at Abbott. But I think then you have to do what Ryan's saying and say, now we've got to use the data, and we actually have to create personalized nutrition for each person, because not only are people they just behave differently and they burn calories differently, they have a different type of lifestyle, but a lot of people nowadays have a huge amount of allergies, a huge amount of conditions around what food they should be eating and when they should actually eat it. And that right now, even though, again, we've been doing this for almost 12 years, it's still so in its infancy, right? And I think what's really exciting, though, is you guys are all solving, to some extent, an acute problem, which is what you want to do. You want to attack something very specific, but the implications of this is just like the complete reinvention of food. I mean, and reinvention of nutrition. And I think what is so exciting is that we will figure it out with the acute and the chronic issues with diabetes, but it's our job now to take it forward, right? And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on where you might be next, because I know we're all solving some, maybe Ryan, you're solving that a little bit more, but I'd love to hear like how we're going to take it to the next level, right?
Yeah, just to comment on that or build on that point, I think we've spent now a decade probably treating the symptom and not treating the problem. So data and big data is being really defined by, it's the new oil for businesses and companies at large. But what consumers crave is context. They want to know what to do with it, and they want to know how it impacts them personally. And I think what we really need to do is get to the problem, which is understanding context on a personal level and being able to scale that. I think that segues into our ability to look at different models and allow consumers to look at different models from different vantage points so they can come to their own conclusion on things. It's the spirit of great debate. Great debate is what evolves opinions and evolves, I think, our culture. So data needs to transform, I think, out of a very cold environment, and it needs to transform into a very warm environment, which is looking at that context in terms of the human being.
Robert, do you have
Yeah, I think that on that angle also, it's like taking the data. I mean, one of the things that we got really kind of maniacal about is we have all this data, right? And how do we package it in a way that is, I'm using the term digestible, but you can kind of look at it and you can understand it. And we produced this report, and our whole goal was, was to say, okay, could somebody look at this and again, not try and do what Dr. William does, on a more professional level, but to be able to look at it and say, okay, my problem is here. My problem is in the morning. My problem is in the afternoon, and I can quickly and easily see it. I think the next stage is going to be, okay, how can you then, to what Ryan said, how can you give them some guided interpretation on what to do? Not just find out what it is, but okay, and now do this. And I think we're working hard with a couple companies to kind of be able to take this very large kind of data set and translate that into, okay, if this, do that, if that, do this kind of mentality and mode.
Dr. Sweet, your thoughts?
I would say that, data change people to some extent, but people change people. I think in the deepest way, how do we leverage those data information displayed in an emotionally relevant way, but interfacing with the human agent, and how do we most efficiently use that restricted, the most expensive resources, that the human interface? I think it's a challenge that we have yet to really resolve. And I think the next phase of technology is not just simply generating tons of information, but how do we help the individuals to use it, and how do we interface with human agents? I think that's our next barrier.
Thank you.
Question.
Anybody? Question? Sir? Somebody's coming to you, right? Yeah, great.
Do you see EHR as being a centralized location where physiological and diagnostic information will be stored for the providers? And
Is the electronic health record going to
Right.
be I think the electronic health, first of all, I hate the electronic health record as a user, okay? I know it's a mandate, it's created, it's incredibly painful. I think I see that as a very small part of digital health. I think everybody's going to have their own record. Robert, but somebody's going to have to store the data, and that's a very important point, and secure it. This idea that patients are going to be managing themselves and teaching their doctors, so that human interface, when your patient comes to you, they're teaching you, and then you're landing the plane on the Hudson. Your Captain Sully is actually writing the prescription. This idea that we're all managing especially chronic disease. There aren't enough doctors to manage. We're 20,000 oncologists short, even in the United States. So would you tell the Chinese when you go, that you say, look, these are going to be automated systems? You're going to need 5 endocrinologists in China?
No, I think EHR is going to transform dramatically because there will be more data that's generated out of the patient rather than generated out of the office, the doctor's office. So the nature of EHR will change. And I think here's another challenge of grappling with self-generated data that interface with humans. Physicians don't want to see all those data anymore because, I mean, just think about how much they will have to digest. 24/7 continuous glucose sensing information. I mean, we could be up all day, all night, and not be able to digest all the information. So I think the gateway has to be that the interpretation of this data have to be relevant, has to be concise, and has to be interpretable and actionable within, sort of a glance. And I think that's really the next barrier and the next advancement.
Robert, I don't know how you guys ultimately see this vision. By the way, you can stick a lot of other stuff on that sensor besides glucose, get other values. So imagine that. But don't you think we'll have our own medical? I mean, it won't scale unless patients are self-managing. So I imagine almost writing a remote prescription. When I write for that sensor, my remote prescription is give your own, titrate it yourself based on your own learning algorithm for you. That's the only thing that scales.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of data to be generated, and then you just you've got to focus. So we can do more with that form factor. We can measure other analytes in the body, and we're studying those other analytes. But as we close the loop on glucose, like I said, the next stage is going to be about taking that and providing guided interpretation. And we don't have all the resources. Like, we're very good in chemistry and manufacturing, but we're not. That was a key thing for us, is we need help. People that actually know this better than us. And we partnered with a company in Northern California called Bigfoot Medical. And what they're going to do is they're going to take our data. We're partnering with them to ultimately lead to kind of a fully closed loop for people that don't use insulin pumps, and they use these insulin syringe pens, and they will be using sensors on these insulin syringe pens that will show to them how much insulin was put into the body. They'll know how much insulin is in the body. They will know what their glucose level is because of our product, and from those marrying of those two data sources, they will ultimately be able to say, okay, you're going to have lunch. You need to take X amount, because I know how much is in your body of insulin. I know what your glucose level is, where it's going, and I know what you're going to eat. So you now need to take this exact amount, and you're taking that away from some more general kind of prescription methodology that exists today to more personalized kind of prescription at that exact time. I think that's where we're going to go with it. Again, very focused. There are so many different things that you can do, but that's where we're going to focus on to close that loop, and then move on to other sources.
Great. We have one more, Brad. Sorry. Go, Joe.
Oh, no, one more question, maybe.
Oh, one more. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. Oh, she's there.
Thank you. I come from a family of diabetics, so also very personal for me. Can we get the product here in the U.S.? And if not, how come? It seems to be in a lot of other countries. I guess our FDA colleague will be involved in this discussion as well. We've been working with the FDA. We submitted it last year. It's been very kind of productive in terms of the conversations and kind of responding to the questions. I think, I guess I would say personally to you and your family, we're kind of in the 9th inning is my sense. So very soon. But it's been amazing to see what's happened in other countries like Japan, France, Germany, UK. I mean, all these countries that have historically not reimbursed for sensor-based systems because they've been in the market for about 10 years. It's taken us about a year and a half to get reimbursement for those systems, so they're all now covered in these countries. So it's been great.
Okay.
Let's join together and thank this distinguished panel.